Today's episode of School Talk is sponsored by KI Global. KI Global empower individuals, families, and organizations through expert coaching, parental guidance, and school consultancy. Their work includes supporting mums going back to work, women empowerment sessions, and helping your child navigate their education. Whether you're a parent, a school, or a business looking to inspire or grow, then KI Global is the place for you. Visit kiglobal.com to find out more.
Is it location that's super important? Is it that you want them to follow a specific curriculum because your plan is to go back maybe to your home country afterwards and then the transition's easier? Like, she's not worked for 6 years.
Yeah.
And now going back into the workplace, she's like, things are so different. There's different technology. There's people are different. There's really young people here. And so that can be really difficult. It's a difficult transition back into work.
Hi, I'm Chris Shrubsole and welcome to School Talk, the podcast where we have meaningful conversations about education, learning, and those issues that matter most to students, to parents, and to teachers. With over 10 years experience in international schools, I've seen firsthand the challenges, but also the opportunities in learning today. Each week, I'll sit down with inspiring guests to share stories, insights, and strategies on how we can help shape the future of education. Whether you're here to grow, to learn, or to spark change, this is the place for you. So let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of School Talk podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by Lauren from KI Global. Lauren's passion lies with empowering individuals and organizations with individualized coaching, parental guidance, and educational consultancy. We'll talk about how her team supports families, schools, and communities, and really discuss why it's so important to understand the human side of education today. This is a really interesting episode, and I hope you enjoy it. Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of School Talk. This week, I'm joined by Lauren from KI Global. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And KI Global, talk to us. What is it to you?
It's my little project, I guess. It's my business that I've had for 8 years now. And the tagline that we use is supporting education and development for all. So we're an education support company. We've got 4 areas that we focus on. So key guidance, which is supporting parents and providing guidance for schools. We've got key people. So we do a lot of HR and L&D consultancy, but mostly within like the education space. Key development, which is providing training and development programs for teaching assistants within schools. And then key empowerment. So we support mums back into work. And we also support with career change, again, all mostly within the education space. But this links in with key guidance with our parents and supporting parents as much as we can.
Of those 4, what would you say is your busiest?
Right now, the busiest one is key empowerment because we're about to launch tomorrow a new program called Empower, which is where we've got 12 mums coming and we do a 4-session program to help them get back into work. But to be honest, key guidance is always the busiest because there's always parents that need support. There's always questions about schools, nurseries, etc.
Yeah, and that support there, so they've got questions. What commonly would those questions be?
How do I find a school?
Yeah.
Where do I start? About curriculum. Normally there's questions about different curriculum, which curriculum is right for my child. There's always questions about if they've got kids of different ages as well, how do we make sure they both get into the same school? And just kind of general questions about navigating that school system because it's a little bit complex here.
Yeah, we spoke before we started recording about even getting kids on wait lists and things like that. So talk to us about, you've just had your first child. At what time should you be thinking about schools, wait lists? Go from there.
It's such a good question because we were just chatting as well, saying that when I had my son, I put his name down on a school list 2 days after he was born.
Yeah.
But that was because I knew which school I wanted him to go to. I'd worked in the education space for years before that, so I already knew where I wanted him to go. But to answer the question, I think really there's no real specific age. I would say you need to put their name down. It depends what you're looking for.
Yeah.
If you're looking for them to get into somewhere like Jess, you need to be on the ball and you need to know where you want them to go. You need to get the name on the list early around their first birthday, ideally.
Yeah.
If you don't have a specific place in mind, then, a year before they're looking to go to school, then start to think about it then.
You don't have a school in mind.
Mm-hmm.
What things should you be looking out for as a first-time parent or sending your kids to school here in Dubai?
So we always advise parents that you come up with a wish list. What are the things that are really important? So your non-negotiables, basically. Is it location that's super important? Is it that you want them to follow a specific curriculum because your plan is to go back maybe to your home country afterwards and then the transition's easier? So come up with that wish list first. And then once you've got those, then you can start to think about, okay, which schools fall within that wish list, basically.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to get everything on that list, but that's where you come up with your negotiables and your non-negotiables. There's maybe 3 or 4 things you say, absolutely, we have to have that.
You've got a wish list. You're not going to get all of them. Is there some things you'd advise parents, okay, you've got X, Y, and Z, but I really think you should consider something else? What's the thing people often overlook?
I think, honestly, the thing people overlook most often is the importance of the fit for the child with the curriculum.
Yeah.
Because they might say, we want British curriculum because we're from the UK, we're going back to the UK. That doesn't mean that's the best fit for your child. So that's probably the thing we give the most advice around is actually that might not work the best for your child.
You offer support for families that are in the UAE currently, but also families that are looking to relocate to Dubai?
Yep. Yeah. Yep, we do both. And a lot of the services then kind of tie together as well, because if you've got a family who are moving to the UAE for the first time, we help with guidance, but then we might also help mum find a job.
Yeah.
Or if she's been out of work for a while, help her, build up confidence, etc., to come back into work. So yeah, we do both.
And do you think price is a weird one? Because some schools are crazy expensive compared to others. And normally that's an indication of quality, isn't it? But as we all know, but somebody from the outside looking in might not know, the more expensive doesn't necessarily mean a better school.
It sometimes depends on facilities. We were talking about a couple of schools before that the facilities are incredible, but again, does that mean that they're going to get the best learning experience? Possibly not. Prices, because it's obviously linked to KHDA ratings as well. If a school's outstanding, they can put up their fees. So there is some credibility in it, but a lot of it's got to do with facility.
If a school goes down in rating, do they decrease the fees?
No.
Definitely not.
I've never seen it.
No, for sure. And just the last thing on school selection, if you were a family coming from abroad and wanted to get in contact with you, and how would that process look? You would do the school tours online with them, you do them for them. How would that process look?
So it depends what the family wants, really. But normally what happens is if they want us to do the tour for them, we'll do that. We would normally have a Zoom call first and ask about, what questions do you want? What do you need to know from the school? And then we can go and do the tour on behalf of the parents. What we also do is on our social media, we've got a bank of school tours already that we've done.
So, amazing.
We've kind of partnered up with some schools to just try and find out more about them. And the tour's already on our social media, so parents can access that. And there'll be an FAQs, or they can do the tours virtually as well. Sometimes that's an option.
And you work, obviously you go into a school and they know that you're doing this, they know of you. And the kind of the collaboration between you and schools? Yep.
So we're honest about it. We just say who we are, that we're doing this on behalf of the parents. And that's why we've tried to build relationships with the schools first. So, we've went in and introduced ourselves. Normally we meet the admissions team and maybe one of the senior leadership, do the tour, and they normally give us all the information that they want us to pass on to parents as well.
It's probably advantageous for them as well, having a good relationship, because then you are more likely to recommend them and say, look, this school's great and accommodating. And
because it's all about the experience you get when you go into the school as well, right?
Sure.
And we're also honest with parents about that. So if we go in and we have a really poor experience, then that's what we would feed back to the parent.
Yeah, so interesting. And so that's one pillar. You've got another pillar you spoke about there is helping ladies get back to work. Would that be after having children? Would that be having a break from work?
It's both, to be honest. So we do a couple of things here. We help mums go back to work. So after them, I'll give you an example. One lady we're working with just now, her a son. Our oldest son went to Jess a couple of years ago, so he's going into year 1 now, and our youngest son's about to start in September. So she's thinking, I need to go back to work, I need to do something, but she doesn't want to work full time, so she wants something kind of flexible. So we're supporting her just now. But we also support women who've had a career break. So if they've went traveling or for whatever reason. And then we also support women who are looking to transition in their career. So it might be that they want a promotion, they're looking for a leadership role, or it could be that they want a complete change in career as well.
And some of the barriers that women face going back to work, I'd say most men, like when I had Harper, I took 2 weeks off work. And I was only supposed to get a week, 2 weeks, and then went back. And then now, having been off with Margot, I can't get my head around how hard it was those first few months. So, like, what are the main barriers for women going back to work?
I think it's the separation. First of all, if you do have young kids that haven't been together all day long and then suddenly you're separated, it's hard for the kids, but it's also hard for mum as well. I think one of the ladies was saying last week that things are so different now. Like, she's not worked for 6 years. And now going back into the workplace, she's like, things are so different. There's different technology. There's people are different. There's really young people here. And so that can be really difficult. It's a difficult transition back into work. And then also the other challenge we have here is if, let's say it's a mum who moved here with her family and hasn't worked in the UAE before, the culture, the environment of working in a different country can also be a challenge.
So then how do you guys support them with that? You do one-on-one sessions, group sessions? How does it look?
Both. So some women want one-to-one coaching. So we provide that. And then others, we're running this Empower program. So the first one starts tomorrow. It works over 4 weeks. So it's 4 Tuesday mornings that we're running for 3 hours in the morning. And we cover a whole range of topics, things like confidence building, imposter syndrome, but we also look at the practical side of things. So, how do you find a job if someone doesn't have a job? Is it through LinkedIn? We also try and connect them with companies as well that within their industry that might be of interest. But we help them build practical skills like how do you interview? Because some of these ladies haven't interviewed for 10 years, and the way you interview now is different. It could be interviewing with an AI, not actually with a person. So
is that true? Is that so?
Yeah, some, especially the bigger companies, when they're doing a lot of interviews, it could be
they're prelim rounds just to get you through.
It could be AI that interviews you. I know it's such a weird experience, and it's not foolproof either because you lose out on that human touch as well. So if someone is nervous or has a bit of a poor performance in an interview, then the AI doesn't necessarily pick up why that's happened. They just say no, they've been rejected.
I think I'd rather speak to a person 100 times over than a computer. Gosh,
absolutely. So that's definitely a challenge, and just the world of work's different now. So kind of getting them prepared for that, and also things like how do you handle rejection? If they do go for a job and they don't get it, how do we manage that with them? We've got a lady right now who's joining the program tomorrow, and she's been for 10 interviews in the last month. And has been rejected for all of them, and she just cannot figure out what is going wrong. The first thing we've said to her is you've applied for too much. Stop applying for everything. You need to value your own work.
Be more specific with it. So interesting. I think we spoke before about imposter syndrome. Since doing the podcast, I got recognised at my daughter's sports day a couple of weeks ago.
Amazing.
And got shown around a company before, and I was just like, as if they think I'm any good at this stuff. It's so strange, But then also the rejection as well. Like, you try and approach people to come on the podcast and they're like, no, you're too small. Why would I come? Why would I bother? It's a very double-edged sword that you kind of the ups and the downs with it.
It's not easy. I think that like when we're running these programs, if you can relate to the people that you're trying to support, it's a huge thing. Like when last year I ended up going on Helen Farmer's show in the afternoon. Honestly, that's the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. The imposter syndrome was just through the roof. I couldn't even get out of bed that morning. Like the thought of having to do something like this.
Because it's just obviously just the two of you sitting there.
Exactly. So it was so scary, but also a great thing to step out of my comfort zone and make myself do something like that. So the idea is that, you know, if we can pass on a little bit of that knowledge and experience to some of these other women, that hopefully that helps them as well. Because the fear is real.
Yeah, the fear is real, yeah.
And that could be like someone else going in for an interview and feeling that level of fear because they've not done it for so long, or, you know, even stepping out and thinking about what else can I do, like what transferable skills have I got. And so one other lady we've got, she used to be cabin crew, but she's got 2 young kiddies now. So she's like, I can't go back and be cabin crew, but there's loads of other things she can do. She just doesn't know where to start.
Yeah, for sure. I think that imposter syndrome there, I got through to the Chris Fade pop quiz a couple of months ago. I have never been so nervous in my life. They keep you on hold for like 3 minutes and they keep checking, you still there?
Yeah.
I was sweating. So I can't imagine going into a studio and speaking to someone. That must have been mad. Yeah.
It was mad. It was a whirlwind, to be honest, because they kind of whisk you in and brief you, and then suddenly you're sat there in front of her. And
from their perspective, they do it all day, every day. It's just another guest.
Exactly. And she was so lovely and so kind and like, stop worrying, it's fine, I'm just going to ask you some questions. But yeah, I mean, doing things like that have been so good for the business as well. And
I guess, exposure, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that point you touched on before about transferable skills, there's a guy, his episode's coming out tomorrow actually. He was a teacher and he left teaching. And a lot of it was finding a niche into something. He started his own business. He didn't go for something else, but he was like, you need belief in yourself to be able to do that. But then it's like you said before, if you don't have the belief, having someone there to hold your hand, to give you the belief, and then be like, you've done X, Y, and Z in your previous job. There's no reason why this can't. Yeah. But I think I've seen it so many teachers that don't want to leave teaching, but are interested in what else is out there, but they're not sure what else they can do.
Yeah.
I was like, as a teacher, you have so many skills that are transferable to so many different things. It's just finding it. The work that people transfer to, that's within education, or it could be all sorts of fields?
It could be all sorts, to be honest. And we do also look at the entrepreneurship angle as well. So if someone has an idea for a business, then, you know, what could you do with that? But that's a whole other set of advice on how do you start a business? What are the things you need to think about? Like we had a lady last week who wants to start a soap business. And it's actually a really nice niche idea. I won't share it. I'll leave that for her to do it. But she had no idea how to even do like a spreadsheet for accounts, basic budgets. So we also do a lot of partnerships with other companies that can provide like specialist training like that. So there's one called My Learning Curve, and they do a lot of specialised support with things like that that maybe we can't offer.
What would you say is the biggest success story you've had? Someone's come to you in terms of either I want to go back to work, or I want to leave my job, or I'm struggling. What biggest success story?
Biggest success story, I'll pick the one that I want to share. So probably the one that I'll share is a lady who came to us a few months ago. She worked for a legal firm, so she was a paralegal in her previous life. And then she had 4 kids, moved to Dubai, brought up her 4 kids over like 15 years. So she's been here for a long time. And she came to us and said, look, I have no idea where to start, but I've been offered a receptionist position. I don't want a receptionist position. So we said, well, why are you going for the interview? Don't go for an interview if you don't want the job. But the advice she'd been given was, I need to get my foot back in the door. So the reception job was at a legal firm. And we said, look,
dangling the carrot.
Don't do it, because if you know you're going to be miserable, don't do it. So she ended up coming to us, did some one-to-one coaching because she couldn't commit to the morning programs. And since then she retrained. She's moved into, it's still within like legal, but she got herself a different certificate, which allows her to be like a legal secretary. I think that's the right term. And she's now gotten the job that she wanted.
Really?
But it took a lot to not convince her, but to let her see you don't need to do something just because you need the job.
It's hard to say no sometimes as well. If you,
like
you said, not worked for that amount of time, and the first thing you offered, you turned down. It's a bit like, and you don't, I don't know the situation, but there might be financial pressures and something like,
exactly.
I need that,
And that's a different situation as well then, right? Because if someone financially needs a job and, you know, money is the driving factor, then fine, you go and you do that position for a bit and you look for something else in the meantime. But if you have the choice not to do that, then the advice we would always give is don't put yourself in that position.
Yeah.
Use the time better to find something that you would really enjoy.
Just out of interest, most of the people you work with are mums that are returning back to work, are people that are trying to shift career paths, or is it
I'd say
mix?
60% are mums looking to go back to work, and 40% are women looking to either change their career path, but mostly looking to move into leadership. So within the education space, we get a lot of women coming to us for, they're looking for that next step up. So we're also part of the Women in Educational Leadership Network, which ran its first summit last year. And that's all about supporting women into leadership positions. So that's a lot of the inquiries that we get. Just how do I do that? How do I get that next step up? Maybe they've been for a leadership interview and they've not gotten the job, and they just need that support.
And from your side, from KI side, that would just be support, tips, training about interview prep, interviews, the whole role itself. But you're not collaborating with a school on it at all.
No, we don't do that. We do a lot of coaching support there, because a lot of that is either emotional. So thinking about how do they transition themselves into that role, and belief that they can actually do it. So again, going back to things like imposter syndrome and confidence. So it's a lot of one-to-one coaching. Yeah,
because even being in the position where you're parallel with someone, and then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, you're asking them to do things, knowing how to ask them to do that, and all of that is tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, these are maybe people that you went out with at the weekend before, and now you're their boss, right? So
putting them in for a chat, for sure.
Yeah, it's difficult.
School curriculums, there's a lot of different ones out there. You said there that a kid who's English, been in a British curriculum school, a British curriculum might not be the best for them. Talk to us a bit about curriculums.
So the best way is to give an example of this. So a lady that I know, she sent her son to British curriculum school. They are all British. She went to British curriculum school. Her husband did as well. And they just felt that would be the best approach because it's got a lot of structure, and thought that's the right thing. It has been a complete fail.
Is it?
He's gotten into trouble and he's just really young, but the school have called them in a few times about behaviour issues. Now, he does not have behaviour issues outside of school, but he's pushing back. He doesn't want to stand in a line. He doesn't want to learn the song about how you put your hands at your side and your eyes face forward and you stand in a line. It doesn't work for him. And that's just his personality. What he actually would benefit from is IB. Because it's a bit more free flow. It's a bit more creative in a way, but there's just less rules and less restrictions. So they're actually transitioning him to an IB school because it is going to be the best fit for him. So one of the things that we work with parents on is we don't explain all the curriculums to them because if we did that, they'd fall asleep. But what we try and find out is a little bit more about their child. So, does your child like rules? Do they like a bit of order and
that structure, isn't it?
A bit of structure, that's exactly the right word. Like, my son absolutely loves that. I mean, he's constantly bossing his little sister around and saying, you need to do this and this box goes here. Now, that doesn't mean that the British curriculum is completely restricted, of course not, but that works for him. I think probably my daughter's going to be more of an IB child, so we'll figure that out when we get there.
I was going to say, you're doing two different drop-offs
exactly. But there are schools that offer multiple curriculums as well. So maybe primary school is British, and then when you get to secondary, they might offer IB and A levels as well. So I think having the option might be important as well.
Yeah. And a family who looking to transition to Dubai, so many different things to consider. You've got your education for your kids first. What are the big things that we need to consider that are stressful, would you say, that you, KI, help to support with?
So the biggest thing families tend to ask us about is where should they live, because they either want to pick the school first and then figure out where to live afterwards, or they've picked an area. So they might say, we're going to live in Springs, where should we go? So we'll just take it based on what they've decided. Is it location first? Is it school first? That's one of the big things. It might even be things like social support as well. So how do we find friends? How do we find a football club? How do mum and dad find friends? It could even be that kind of thing. Although we don't necessarily offer specific support for that, we will offer advice. And then it could be mum asking about it, or dad, I need to find a job. Can you support with that? So we're trying to build partnerships through the British Chamber of Commerce just now, where we partner with different companies that, if we've got someone coming in who's a marketing specialist, for example, and we know there's a role with this company, that we could make the introduction. So that's kind of future focused. That's something that we're building at the minute.
Yeah. And you said there about touching on guys needing jobs. Is it predominantly women you focus with, but do offer it services for men as well?
Yeah, we do. So the programs that we run are for women. The Empire programs are for women, but the coaching support could be men or women.
Okay.
It completely depends. And we do have a lot of dads coming to us as well and asking for support.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm on the British Dads Facebook group. There's a lot of, seems to be more and more now, just I need someone to talk to. And I don't care, just like open up to, which is good to see that people are reaching out.
So good.
But then I also think it's hard as well that people haven't got anyone to talk to, which is a shame as well. But then you'd rather them reach out than not. So
absolutely,
everything's pointless.
So it's something that we've been asked about quite a lot. And when we done the Women in Educational Leadership Network, we had 3 men come and attend the summit, which was amazing. It was great to have support from men as well. But their question was, when are you going to do something like this for men as well? Because absolutely both sides need support, right? And it's great to see a lot of men coming forward and asking for support as well. So some of the coaching clients we've got at the minute are men who are in maybe leadership positions, but they're just struggling with the pressure of it, the burnout of it. And so the coaching focuses on that, which more becomes kind of life coaching rather than career coaching. It's a bit of both, really.
I'd say here as well, there's probably more pressure for the guy to work and the woman not to work, just because of social comparisons. If there's a dynamic where one partner works and one doesn't, it's normally the woman that's at home and the guy that works. So that social pressure for a guy to provide, keeping up with your neighbours at the school they go to, the cars they drive, all of that must be so difficult.
And I'm sure it's even more difficult now with just how tough the economy is here.
For sure.
So how expensive everything is. You need to earn more money.
Like I go to that baby sensory class and I'm the only dad in there. It's like 20 mums. And the first time I walked in, they were like, who's this guy?
I mean, it is different. I think if we were doing something like that, maybe in Europe, the split would be different.
Because even things like maternity. Like I've got a friend back home who the CEO of their company is a woman. And she was like, well, if a woman gets 6 months off, the guy gets 6 months off as well. I think that's not the exact timing, but it's definitely equal split of how much they get. Whereas here, might need to be looked at still.
Well, I think that I'm pretty sure from my HR background, there's a law in Europe that you get a certain amount of time off, but then you choose to split it however you want. So mum can take like 7 months and dad can take 2 months or however long it is. But
it depends on the dynamic.
Exactly.
Sure. Talk to us about people transition here as well from a different country. You've got things like culture to consider and just like general lifestyle. Do we offer support for that as well?
If they're coming here, that normally all happens through Zoom calls. And it's very discussion based of what to expect. It might even be introducing them to, a few people who are here, kind of buddy type system, like we would do with schools, just so that they get used to things. But we do support them on, we've got like a pack that they get basically to say, here's your introduction to Dubai and things to do, things not to do. To be honest, it's something I developed for teachers years ago when we were bringing teachers in during the recruitment phase. It was like, right, here's all the things you should do, you shouldn't do. I mean, there's less rules here now. Obviously, things have changed culturally, but there's still, things that they need to know. But we do that with parents, but mostly discussion based. And then if what they sometimes do is they choose to come here for a visit first. So when they come here, we'll maybe take them to like some key places for them to know around about where they might live, etc. So just help to introduce them.
And then talk to us a bit about the work you do with members of staff within school. So you do training to help upskill them, up-level them?
Yep. So we've got a program that we run called Key Development, and it is all for teaching assistants. So obviously we know within schools, most of the budget goes to teacher development. But the idea actually came from a school principal who approached us and said, do you do this? And if you don't, you really should do this. We run them either as online workshops or as face-to-face training sessions. And And we have 2 different modules. So one where it's kind of introduction to how to be a TA, what are the basics, what should you be doing versus what you shouldn't. And then we have more specialised modules which look at things like behaviour management, how to speak to parents. We also teach them a bit about the curriculum as well. So obviously in the UK, you've got like your cash qualification. So this is kind of a way forward into the cash qualification. Because not all schools want to invest in a cash qualification for their teaching assistants. But retention of teaching assistants is such a huge problem. I mean, they turn over constantly. So the idea is that if schools are able to upskill them, they keep them for longer. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
That's the idea.
Those 2 you mentioned there, talking to parents and behaviour, can go such a long way to help support the whole community, not just the teaching assistants themselves.
I mean, I really understood. So I've worked in schools for years. I've been here 15 years and worked in schools the whole time. But I only really understood the importance of a teaching assistant when Freddie went to nursery. And the teacher that he had was a bit hit or miss, to be honest. Most of the time I went in, she was on her phone. Wasn't great. But the teaching assistant, he really took to one particular lady. She was fantastic. She understood behaviour. She would come and tell me if he'd done something a bit naughty. She was just good at communication, but you could see as well that she was on it with all the kids. And you'd go in and she'd set up an activity, and it was just, she was fantastic, and he really, really loved her. And it was so important for his experience at nursery, because I think if she hadn't been there, we would have probably moved him. And not for us, but for him, because he wasn't getting a good experience with this particular teacher.
And for some context as well, a lot of teaching assistants here, English isn't their first language.
Exactly.
First of all, having the confidence to speak to a parent if they've done something wrong is huge. Because even teachers are a bit like, I've got to speak to a parent today, he's done that. And that English native language from the same country, but language barrier is a thing, confidence is a thing. So being able to provide them with those skills is invaluable.
And I mean, she approached us, and she would come and approach me when I picked him up and say, but she would also give me the good positive things, right? Course, and she would say, managed to do this today, it was really great. And then he would come home and speak Tagalog.
Really?
And I would say, what are you saying? And he's like, it's Tagalog, mummy.
That's so nice to hear.
It's a great skill. It's amazing.
KI moving forward, what are you looking to expand in? You said you've got your Empower courses starting. Are you going to have a new enrollment for that soon? How else are we moving forward?
Yes, so we have 2 spaces left on the one for this week, which is amazing because it's the first one in Dubai that we've run. We've got an Abu Dhabi group that is going to run probably March time, and another Dubai group as well. So we'll wait until after Ramadan to run the next group. But I think we'll probably run 2 or 3 more of those before summer, because there's been so much interest, which is incredible. But also looking to expand Empower into corporates as well, or take it into schools, because I think there's a lot that we can do to help businesses transition mums back in to work, and just make sure that the right environment is there, and that mum's ready and the school's ready. Because the other thing we've been talking to businesses about is how you make sure leaders can support mums back into work. Using the right terminology. What is it okay to say? What is it not okay to say? And just looking out for things like mental health awareness. So transitioning it into schools probably.
Do you think that, sorry to jump in there.
No, go ahead.
The terminology. Do you think some people sometimes prefer just not saying anything because they don't want to say the wrong thing?
Yes.
Especially with that kind of like, mum's coming back to work. They need breastfeeding time. They need all that. From a guy, that can be quite daunting if they've never had kids or like they're not that close with the person.
Absolutely. So I remember from my experience when I taught at one of the universities here, and I came back, and the guy who was like my direct line manager there, he was like, I don't know what you need. You just need to tell me. I'm like, well, first of all, I need a room that's, where I can breastfeed, etc. And he's like, okay, is this room okay? And I'm like, no, because there's windows everywhere. So that's not really going to work.
I bet he's like, oh yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, okay. But I think it's just about opening up that communication and making sure that they can speak. And sometimes that's just you being a mediator to say, okay, what do you need? What do you need? And let's make sure that happens. So yeah, that's one of the main areas to expand into, I think.
Yeah.
The other thing as well was just to the Women in Educational Leadership Network. We're running our next summit in September as well, and that obviously links up with the empowerment side of things. So supporting mums, but particularly supporting women in education to find maybe that next position. So that's going to be a big focus over the next kind of 6 months.
And if people want to get involved in that, how do they do that?
We've got our LinkedIn page, which is WELN, Women in Educational Leadership Network, or you can contact us through Key Global and through our social media.
Yeah, I'll put all of this information on the podcast show notes and social media stuff as well, so you can get in contact.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, because we'll be looking for speakers for people, especially people who've never spoken before. We're not looking for like seasoned speakers.
Oh, nice.
We're looking for women who have an idea that they want to talk about, something they think will benefit the community. And if you haven't spoken before, then we'll give you a platform to speak. So
that's so nice.
Trying to find speakers, exhibitors as well. So small businesses that, not just female-run businesses, but male-run businesses as well, that can come and showcase their products.
Okay, super. Lauren, thank you so much for coming on. That's been really interesting.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. As I said, all this information I'll put on the show notes and it'll be tagged in all our social media stuff as well. So thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
This has been School Talk, a really interesting conversation with Lauren today from KI Global. Anything there you found interesting, get in contact and Lauren will be able to help. My name's Chris Shrubsole. This has been School Talk. Bye for now.